Okay, so I'm going to continue my painting here. I'm going to start with bushes. And I've already got my paint laid out down here. I got yellow and black, my favorite two colors. Not the only colors, but my favorite two for making vegetation in a painting because it's so quick and easy. So I just practice a technique that I would just kind of call maybe like under mixing so that I don't blend the colors all the way and get shapes in the process. So this is what I mean. I'll put black to put some overhanging vegetation. Maybe I could zoom a little more as well. We can get closer than that. I'm going to work on these bushes right in here. And I'll just go right at it with black and then I'll lighten it with yellow. And they're going to mix together, but not all the way. And so this technique of two really, really different contrasting colors causes them to get closer and closer to each other in value as they mix. And then I choose when to stop. And I strategically stop at a point when I still have some shapes left. See, I'm just going through and doing little, very short brush strokes. There we go. And now we've got some vegetation coming out into the light. I like that technique because of the speed that it is. So I'm going to start on the left side of each clump and get darker as I go toward the where these bushes are growing from. So here's my pure yellow. It very quickly takes on the black. I brush over it a few times. Now, I don't go too many times. I hear over and over how this kind of technique is tried and it just turns all to one muddy color. And that's just from hitting it a few too many times. You know, if I keep brushing at that a few more times, I'm going to lose my texture. Okay, here's some more. Go ahead, Patricia.
Can I interrupt for a second, Joe?
Yep, absolutely, anytime.
Jacob is on, and he couldn't stay on him, but he just wanted to say Merry Christmas, and he enjoyed meeting with everyone on a weekly basis, and he appreciates all of us and what you do for all of us.
Sweet, thank you. That's very nice. Thank you, Jacob. I'm very happy to hear that. Okay. Let's keep putting some vegetation in here. I just keep putting the shadow in place. It's pure black, but the goal is that it's not pure black by the time I'm done mixing. It's going to end up being, and this is a very light yellow, I think. You know what? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's ordinary. I think if they were in tubes, this would probably qualify as a cadmium light yellow. You know, yeah, you can get those cadmium yellows that are always somewhere in the middle of these colors. You get different variations. This is on the light side, so it's really lightening my black as I put it in. This is just wall paint, but you could definitely, I have done this enough times with tubes of acrylic paints to know that the technique can work the same. So I bring that yellow into the black so there's no more pure black left. I mean, no black is really pure black. That's just a way of saying that it's not mixed out of from its original state. You couldn't get a paint that is truly black. I would think of as a true black would have to be lightless. No light can illuminate the pure black. They all convert to a shade of gray when you shine a bright light on. Okay, that would be like a deep cavity, that like a dark shadow inside of a hole or something would be a true black, or a room too dark to see anything in, that'd be a true black. So I always think of black as just some dark brownish grayish color. They always have some hue that you can see as you add white or any other color. Some blacks, and it's the same with any color. As the shade of green I get will be affected by the yellow I use. It'll be affected by the black I use. But I'm not worried about that. I just think of it as the fun of diversity in my paintings. I don't sweat the difference because it's a small one. The difference I'm making with my composition decisions and all of my brighter color contrast, it outweighs the tiny differences of that green hue that I get. Black and yellow always delivers results that I like. I've never had any trouble with one black over another, one yellow over another. But you can tell when you get, I can definitely look at this yellow. I will purposely get a yellow that looks like that and less orange. If it looks more orange, then I'm going to get so much more of a brownish green when I do this technique. Okay, just little touches with my brush. I've done this with the sponge as well, which is kind of fun. Here's my gray. And I'm going to lighten that a touch more. Let's get a little bit lighter color. And I'm just going to put little strokes in here because that gray, see, I've got it staged. Gray represents distance and atmosphere right now. So if I put negative space in here like that, then I can put little branches. And, I need it to not be too bright. If it's too bright, it might not have the effect. But if I put just a few of these gray spots in here, I can get the look of a tree branch going up like that and get some nice depth to my vegetation, and start blocking it together without trying to sweat a whole bunch of different directions of squiggly little branches. Just a quick first pass at it, I can get little branches in the shadows. Gray is a safe color to use for that. Okay, I heard you connecting. Give me a moment here, Leanne. I've got you connected. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Joe?
Doing great. Thank you.
I really like that splash. That looks great.
Thank you. All right. So my gradients changed. I'm not blending the gradients so far when I'm over here. Over here, I blend it far to get more of the look of sections of my vegetation growing that direction. So I really control the three-dimensional shape with the gradients. That's what I'm doing. So here, this maybe is coming straight toward me. So watch, I'll make it up and toward me. So I'll blend down just a little and out just a little. Here, and that's just a clump coming straight toward me. All by itself, it doesn't look like a lot, but when it's next to all the other things, when it's next to other gradients that are going this direction and this direction, that ends up looking like one that's coming toward me. Gradient, I've tried to say this over and over, or I've said it over and over, gradients are just so powerful. Understanding that like all of the three-dimensional objects in a scene are heavily influenced by the gradients and edges. Where you choose to make sharp edges or blended gradients, that has a huge influence on the three-dimensional shape of everything. Okay, so I'm going to go like this, maybe put in some quicker, looser technique as this. I'm imagining this not like a huge thing. It'd kind of be nice to have like a tree overhanging. I do want it to be very foresty. So if you have any input along the way, just let me know. I don't have my heart set on a very particular scene here. I'm just having fun putting it in place. Might be cool to put a little bit of brown in the tree trunks. Once you get that developed, once you get the basic scene developed, it's fun to come into those little areas and do little adjustments. Here's a brown, just orange and black. A quick brown. I could add a little white if I want to make it show up better. Here we go. Dark grayish brown now because it has so much black and white and just a little bit of orange. But I bet you'll really see that when I get it on here. Let's lighten it up just a little more. So when I come in here, I can go like that and get a slightly brownish color. It's still darker than the background gray, so you can still see the branches. It's not, on the threshold of disappearing against the gray, but I think it'll darken. Enough to still be seen. So I can have some dark brown. Let's put a big branch right there. Just squiggle some brownish tree branch like that. We got a taller tree going up right here. There's my brown area. And what I'm going to do with that is just save the area that I like, and then just cut in background where I don't care about it. So here's my branch, or trunk. This is like the trunk of a tree coming down. I'll come down here. I'm just using my lighter color to emerge out of the darkness, just bringing that out of the darkness, because then what I can do after that is just add white to my black again, just get a gray. See, this is just adding white to it.
Painting a little
But-
bit off screen there, Joe.
Oh, I am, okay.
Just a little bit. Just tip it up a bit.
Yeah, let's go up. Just a touch here.
Good.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we got and so just adding white. Now I've got some atmosphere to go back there, and I'll break it up in patches that are real close to each other so that I get little teensy tree branches in the process. You know, if I'm going to put it in there, I might as well get a few tree branches out of it while I'm doing it. So here, by using a gray, you know, in the same way that the gray just instantly has the feel of reflection on the water, it can instantly have the feel, just because of being a familiar sight, it can instantly have the feel of distant atmosphere. That maybe it's a bunch of trees and hills that are out of focus, but landscapes, you know, we've seen gray used in distant colors millions of times in landscapes. This is an old trick. So I can always come in here and with shade a gray, just cut in a background, and sometimes that gives me more interesting shapes on my branches than if I paint the branches themselves. But I like to go back and forth and do both things. So here I have it's kind of like a furry looking, it's kind of like a furry looking tree trunk going up because of my rough technique there. That wasn't planned, but I kind of like the look. It's like a rugged look. Okay, now I'm going to put bright yellow again. We've got some bright vegetation. I'm going to really load the yellow, and it's going to be brighter up here. Like this. And I'll let it be darker. Keep some of that black. The black is starting to dry. It's not blending. You can see the patches on there that don't look like they're blending as much. So as soon as that happens, I'll just put more black on there. Here we go. And now, you know, I've talked about this before as well. My technique for getting little shapes, I'm looking for the big, I just systematically go through, I look for long brushstroke swipes, and I just chop through those a few times. See this long curved one? I just hit that a few times. Rather than randomly placing little strokes, I'm very quickly going through and looking for long edges to cut apart. That's when I want the grainy, when I'm looking for a more small and grainy texture. So I more quickly get the Keebler elf tree, you know, when I cut apart the large shapes that I see than when I just randomly poke at it. You know, more efficient way to get there. Okay, so I go here, black. I'm gonna put the yellow on there, get a green. This is a very dark green. That'll be nice to get these dark greens kind of coming across my. I'm just barely using my movement of my knuckles like this to go through the darker shadowed areas, go through the background. I'm going to switch over to the, just in case there's another technical problem that you can't get audio to. I'm looking back at my chat screen to make sure that I can see that if something happens. Okay. Putting bright colors on here. I'm going to put some more bright colors here. Once I have these bright lights and shadows established, that's not the end. You know, it's just a really helpful start. The sky is the limit on how many variations of color I can put into my tree. It's just, I've found it really helpful to have a speed technique that quickly develops three-dimensional form, because then my imagination has an easier time with the rest. So watch how I can real quick by just adding gray to my mix. I'll put black just like I've been doing up here. Now this one's going to be black plus a little white. See, it's just going to be a grayer batch of foliage. Now I'll first put a nice heavy pile of gray to blend my yellow into. Now that is going to look a little more distant than the others because it's not going to have, it's grayer. It's grayer. It's got that distant gray in it. So I'm going to add as much yellow as I need to still get my bright colors. But now that yellow is mixing with the gray instead of a black. And so I can get just a little bit of more distant look to this portion of tree here. And then I can do this again. Further away, I can get another layer. So we've got that layer. Let's do another one. Let's go more black and white this time. Right here. Okay, now I'm heavier on the white. I think I am. I think I'm heavier on the white right there. And now I'm going to add white to the yellow as well, but it's not going to make the yellow lighter, just grayer, because remember the yellow the whole time, is mixing with the gray. So the end result is not a real bright yellow. For example, I'm going to go white, and here's yellow, and it's going to mix with that white. So this all by itself is a real light color, but look, it mixes with that gray, and then it's no longer a very light color. So it's just making my whole scheme more gray. So I'm going to touch that a few times. That's mixing with my distant tree shadow color. Maybe this is another tree that's further off in the distance. I'm still thinking about making gradients fading off as they go to the right, because I want this going off from that angle. So just some practical implementation of distant grays here and a wet on wet approach. Like this, put this in here. Here we go. Now, before I get too carried away with details on this, I'm going to want to put more of my landscape in place, I think. So I'll pull off of this tree for a little bit.
So just in case you didn't have time to check the time while you were off, it is 1 hour into the stream almost.
Okay, we still got a half hour. That's plenty of time to finish the painting.
Oh, wow.
Well, to call it finished.
It could be
We got
finished right
time.
now.
Yeah, you could. We could call it that. But I want to clean up the edges on my little boy. I want to shrink his head, and because the proportion, I was realizing the ratio of shoulders to head. I got the ear and top of that a little high. I just think that I have a strategy for getting close on a real quick take, but then I always kind of tweak it when I bring it there. So I was looking at it, just thinking the head looks just a little tall and large. That's all. Kind of like a cartoon. That's all.
Yeah. Kids' heads are generally larger in proportion
Man, they
than
are so
adults.
much larger. Yeah, if you did an adult with that same ratio, that would be not normal. That's for sure. They are so much bigger. That's how you make children, is you just make sure that head is nice and large, and that the overall width of the limbs is a little wider too, because that and those proportions do it every time. You get childlike proportions. If I wanted this to look like a 17-year-old, shrink the head and leave the skinniness that you see now from cutting off. When I was doing the background, I cut off edges.
Right.
But that adds age to it. That thinner build adds taller, lankier build, and then shrinking the head makes the body bigger in proportion. Those two things immediately increase the age. So it's kind of a fun thing to know to use at your discretion. Might be kind of fun to put some dark green vegetation and shadows kind of hanging down like this. Let's put like vines. I always loved vines. Growing up in Ohio, I'd go play in the forest a lot. had so many vines. We just don't see vines like that here in Arizona. I miss that. I'm gonna put some vertical.
Yeah, no vines here either.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. Walking through a forest and just seeing vines everywhere is so fun. When you're just kind of putting around looking for things to do. I mean, you could just grab a vine and just swing away. It was a cool
wow.
thing. Swing into a river.
We have lots
Creeks,
of moss, lots
trails.
of ferns, but no vines.
Yeah, and what was nice, you know, if you go up to the northwest, it's just so wet all the time. It's hard to get out and enjoy those things.
Mhm.
But we had just enough dryness in the Midwest up there. That was one of the real special beauties about it, was that you could get out and enjoy it a lot. Really, if you're an outdoor person, you get out. If you could get over the bugs and the humidity, you get past those two things.
Yeah, we have to get over the wet. Sorry
Right.
about that.
Okay, a little bit of blue to add to my gray, and I'll get purple just in case it turns a bit too greenish. Sometimes when I'm adding blue, turquoise, it gets this turquoise that's like crazy. Doesn't look like a natural landscape. That can happen. So I've got the purple there just in case. All right. We're putting in a background. We don't need to be fancy. We can just throw in a background. Let's do this, but lots of white. We're going to need to get more white. And all this can be very impressionistic. It can all be just impressionistic background. My white is a little bit clogged up here. Give me a second to unclog my tube of white. Okay. So I'm getting a new pile of white paint to put up there on the painting. Let's go like this. Okay, there's some grays. Now I'll put a touch of blue in there. You see, but this, you know, when I get that turquoise, it does not feel like natural sky or forest. I always need to lean that turquoise color just because of the shade of blue that I'm using. So I do want things to be a little on the green side, maybe. So I don't know. It's grayish. It doesn't look terrible, does it? It's just if it looks too turquoise. Turquoise is like a dangerous landscape color. It can really destroy the natural things we're used to seeing. You know, it's just not common to see any brilliant turquoise in a distant atmosphere or something. Okay, I'm putting a little bit of my blue and the gray. There, now maybe that's just like distant forest. Maybe we can make a patch of brighter sky just shining through. Here's some purple. Here's some blue to get brighter sky that's not overly turquoise. I'm going to add some purple. That's purple and some what would be like a phthalo blue with a green hue. There's different, something I learned just this year. You know, there's a red hue and green hue when it comes to the blues. That's just what they're named. I never would have called them that, but I would not have said. There we go. We got some sky shining through like that, except I need to flip-flop the values. See, this one I want to be lighter than this one right here. So that needs to change in value just a little bit. So let's get some black, darken that up. There we go. Now we've got a distant divide in the trees. Like this. Now, remember, you know, I've talked about methods of blending. So if I need to make this all an even color, I go to the dark spot, put it on a light spot, dark spot, light spot, dark spot, light spot. That's so much more effective than jumping around or trying to pull it where you want it to go when you're trying to even out and blend colors. There we go. Just getting the values worked out, you know, making sure my sky is a little bit lighter, but it's all very close, so it has a good dense, hazy, humid look. I wanted that feel. Okay, there's some black. I'm going to put just a wee bit of the blue in there with some white because I don't need it that black, just a little darker than the sky. Like that. Okay, and now I need to come in here and I'm going to put lower vegetation that's darker right here. Lower vegetation back in here. So this paint's still wet, so the black will mix with it. And here, let me adjust the camera. I've got kind of a wonky angle on that right now, don't I? Here we go. Ah, let's go in there. I'm going to do this. And let's put a little bit of yellow. This is getting closer, so we'll put a few patches of sunlight striking the bushes here, like that. And I'm just going to dab at it so that it's not such a nice formatted shape. You know, it's kind of fading into the background. Like I said, an impressionistic look. Maybe there's a little edge of one here. We got some haze obstructing the view here. We'll just put a few edges coming out of the fog like that. And I need my yellow for some bright sunlight. This one's down close enough to get some bright sunlight. Let's add a little white to that too. And then I'll just dab at it. These are real distant leaves, so I'm not going to use my brush and individually make them. I'll just dab at it with this big messy brush, and I'll just dab at my biggest shapes to shrink them down and get texture real quick. I just look for my big shapes, and those are the ones I target. Shrink it all down. There we go. I could definitely slow down and take more time to put individual clumps. Probably get a more natural look if I separated it into individual clumps, but we want to get the painting done. Let's go like this. Put little bits coming out there. They're just kind of popping up out of the fog that way. And now I need to come in here, put more background. Let's put black in there to get my closer vegetation. Like this, okay. Let's bring that color, maybe a touch more white. So here is, you know, where I might get a little bit more technical because I did my foreground first. I'm going to try to cut it in around my little boy right here. Let's go across here, put it in here, like this, and bring it in here. And then let's go over here and cut off the top of the head because it's too big. Go like this. There, smaller head. Do I still got you on the line?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna say to keep that back, the bushes in the background looking like bushes as opposed to clouds. It's just a matter of keeping the shapes a little bit more small and in line with the shapes on the foreground.
Yeah,
bushes.
yeah, the values matter a lot. You know,
Okay.
we'll judge it against the other thing. We'll compare all of the, like a viewer instinctively is comparing darks and lights to assemble what the three-dimensional form based on the lights and shadows, you know. So I need to be careful with how dark and how light. So that's why I was adjusting just a little bit, getting a little darker than the sky. But this could, you know, it's just a hair away from getting perceived as clouds, just like we can sometimes see objects in the distance and think they're low-lying cloud, like a distant mountain can look like a cloud indeed. So this is just a hair away from looking that, I think, especially if I did like some white puffies on there. If the colors started to match what we're used to seeing in clouds, it would happen real quick. So I guess I'm just trying to stress how the small value changes make big perceptual differences. There, I cut in a little. No, I'm trying to minimize my touch-up work. See, I shrunk the head. Now it feels a little bit more like an ordinary proportion. There. Throwing the rock into the stream. Okay. So let's put the background in. And now I think it's time to clean up some edges. Let's go in here real quick and repair here's my dark shadows of the water going under the tree like this. I'm going to move to the smaller brush again. Right there, we've got my shadows under the tree. Now, those shadows are going to expose the underwater color because the underwater color is there. It's the bright reflections that kind of bury it and interfere. But you know, the closer I get to the foreground, the more I can see under the water. So the more I want the underwater color in the shadows. So I'm going to add I think I already have some orange. Yeah, I got orange and yellow on here. So I used orange and yellow in combination with my black in order to get these underwater colors. So I'm going to put that and some black to get a believable shadowy underwater color. And that's actually going to be the reflection of my tree here. And I'll even add a little extra yellow to, you know, wherever I see the greens, I'll take extra amounts of yellow. Not because I need yellow in there, but because that's what I use to make that green. I'll put it down here. Just the same, here's a patch, so I'll just kind of go down here and put that in. This is not, you know, detail shape work. It's really just values and colors. Getting the perception here. So I'm just taking my tree colors, heavily mixing them with the more brownish underwater color that I've chosen to get this reflection of this tree here. So here's more underwater reflection, adding black, yellow, and orange. Let's put it in here like this. Just horizontal strokes at first, and then I adjust the color. We'll put more orange there. Maybe a little white would be nice. It's so bright here, so we can lighten it up a little bit. Let's put a little bit of light. Not a lot because, well, I don't know. It just depends how much sunlight I want in that area. So I'll just put a little bit more because I think it'll look good. Horizontal strokes, lightening up the color. There we go. And I'm going to get more black as I go up under this to really get that deep shadow. This tree is just growing right out over the water like this. I need to watch my shapes, you know, any break away from that nice horizontal pattern when I'm up in the distance will make a weird look on me. Here's a green patch. I'm going to put a reflection of it down here. And some yellow in there. That. Sometimes I really worry about that pattern, the pattern of water, but in a painting like this, the main pattern is the color and value pattern, not the shape pattern. I talk a lot about the shape pattern so that we can, you know, read and understand what we're looking at, but it's not, sometimes that shape pattern can be very simple.
We have two questions. One from Cheryl. Yeah. Which direction is the light coming from?
Left, over the shoulder. We're going this way. Coming up and left. So that's why this has the highlight. That's why all these clumps have the left side light fading this way.
The back of the shirt.
Yeah, but I didn't make it super clear. There's a lot of obscurity in that. So it's a good question.
And
yeah,
then,
there's.
And then Eva also asked, how do you identify values of a color, Joe? Some colors look darker but have the same value as another?
Yeah, in practice, I identify values of a color with practice, how dark or light they are in comparison. Red and blue are good practice because they're so different. So trying to get a red and blue the same brightness is good value practice,
Mhm.
a good challenge. And then like sometimes computer software, it usually does up like a 95% good job on it. But because the algorithms are something that needs fixed, that are used to convert color to black and white, it's not, sometimes you get a value change when you convert a colored image to black and white on a computer. It's just using math, and that math is not perfectly describing nature in that circumstance. So it's practice. The short answer is just practice, trial and error. But I think close is good. I don't think there's a need for total accuracy. Familiarity with those things. You just lighten the color till you can't tell. I think if you can't tell which one's lighter and which one's darker, then that means they're close. I think it's normal to have pretty good instincts about that. I don't think we're like so bad naturally at judging values because we rely on that to tell us information about the scene.
Mm.
I'm trying to make a cleaned up horizon here. There we go, trying to level it out. It's kind of weird. I've got a lighter horizon there, but I don't know, maybe it's a very sunny creek. If it's very sunlit, then it could lighten the shade of that. So I'll just leave it like that. All I'm doing is taking these colors and adding some darker reflection on my water. So let's put a little bit of yellow, teensy bit of orange. There we go. And it's a river, so it's going to really distort the reflection. So there's no pressure to get this, the right shape. I just want to get some strokes on that look like these colors in the background, since the water could change the look of that pretty easily. Let's do this.
Okay, and just for your reference, it's about 10 o'clock your time.
Yeah, we're out of time, aren't we? That came fast.
Mhm.
Okay, straight line, I'm concentrating. There we go. Let's put a few little spots here too, kind of like that background reflection occurring. I can kind of see under the tree a little bit, like it's really going out onto the water. There we go. Now, I think it's time to touch up the boy. So we're going to put I'm going to do the skin first. Let me get my skin tone colors. I had those pre-mixed, which really saves me trouble. And so mixing those from orange, yellow, black, white, that's what they're all mixed from. But that is not easy when you're remixing them just for every little spot. That's much more convenient to have them pre-mixed. So this is my mid-tone, my highlight, and I have a kind of purplish shadow there. And I'm going to touch up all of the skin tone with that. And then I had a brightest highlight that I used right here for all the brightest spots. So these 4 colors will get me some believable skin tone. So I've got them in order, light to darkest. So we'll call this, notice my mid-tone's very saturated. My reddest mid-tone, we'll just call it upper mid-tone. But you could have just 3, but 4, they just end up being intermediate versions of highlight, mid-tone, or shadow. And the saturation on skin tone usually happens in the middle. So we go here, and that arm's still pretty good. It's not super clean, but I don't think I need to touch it up much. So I'll go over to this arm. I'll put my brightest highlight right here. Clean up that edge. Let's put the brightest highlight across the top of the forearm here. Right there. And let's go down just a little bit on the camera. There we go. Let's do that. Brightest highlight there. We've got a hand coming down here, a finger coming down here. Then we'll put the next color down. Here's my light midtone. And then here is my darker midtone that has the most red in it. We're going to go like this and cut the tapered shape of the arm there because it's kind of going away from me. And we'll blend that a little bit. Yeah, get a little more shadow on it. And then I'll put the underside of that hand. Here, let's put a couple little fingers. Here's a thumb, like this. There we go. Now we got a little hand sticking out. Remember, this is just an impression. Don't be too hard on me. Details. Here's that mid-tone color. There we go. Here's the hand. There we go. I wanted to put a little bend. Another thing that I've noticed I'm so sensitive to is hand position. You know, you look at a picture, it can be the tiniest little blob of an, but we interpret a hand position because there's just something very instinctive. There's an instinctive reaction about hand posture that we get all kinds of feels from it. You know what I mean? Like the way people talk with their hand, we talk with their hands, I think, for that exact reason.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I want to touch this up. I'm trying to get a similar color here. Yeah, so I've just noticed, maybe it's too much assuming to say that everyone's like me, but I know that I'm just so sensitive to hand position. I'll get so much emotional vibe out of the way a person holds their hands. And so I'm careful about hand position when I'm doing human form. And just a little suggestion, like just these blobby shapes, can be, like I said, big difference makers. Even though it's not accurate detail, whatever is perceived by the viewer is going to be a difference maker in the painting. I'm just touching up the edges here. I'm just closing in that background color on the arm to make it a little bit cleaner. Jacob brought this up a while back, like what's the final stages of a picture, and in my opinion it's edges. You know, that's the thing that I do last. So I'm going to lower the hat because I lowered the head, so I'm going to bring the hat down a little lower. There we go. Now it's a little bit more on the back of the head, and then I'll take my lighter purpler color like this, put some light on that edge, and now I'm going to take my red and let's put a little bit of red on my palette.
Can we zoom in just a hair, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a second.
Whenever you get a chance, yeah.
Yeah. Let me put some red on my palette here to use for the shirt. I'm going to zoom the camera in. Here we go. All right. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Now, shirt, this highlight was just orange, a lot of orange mixed with the red. So I'll put my pure red under this sleeve right here. I'll put some in here. Oh, my brush is dirty. Clean out that brush so I can get a bright red. Okay, now this is orange, but that orange is probably going to make a good highlight to the red. Add white to the orange, it kind of turns pink. This particular shade of orange turns especially pink when I lighten it with white. It's a very red shade of orange. It's not like a yellowish orange. So I can add way more white to this one and still have visible color. Where if I add a lot of white to my pure red, I lose so much of my color intensity. So that's why, that's the reasoning, the advantage of using the orange as a highlight to the red. Okay, now I'm going to take some red and just make this a gradient here. Blend that. This. There we go. And maybe a little more white. We've got plenty of color still there. A trick in painting is to have an almost colorless highlight with a halo of color around it to suggest that it's a bright shade of that color. And it's actually just white. Okay, now the shadowed side of my red, I'll probably just add a little bit of purple to it. So down here, just because I think it's a nice effect, there's a little bit of purple. I'll add maybe a touch of white, so it's, I don't know if that's a good method. Let's find out. I'm going to put it on this right side. There we go. Now we got some cleaner edges on the shirt. There we go. And this helps to get a little more of my 3D form on my person here as well, getting more shadow on the dark side of it. Like that. And I think I want to see a little less highlight right through the middle here. I'm going to put more of my pure red right across the middle of the back. So it's mostly just that left side getting the highlight. Now I'm going to edge out the pants. Okay, that's just going to be gray. I'm just going to go down to my palette, mix a gray like this. And I'll strategically make the gray lighter or darker just based on, well, it looks like I added a little bit of blue color to it. So I'm going to add just a touch of blue to this gray, maybe some purple, blue purple. I must have done that. I had forgotten I did that at the beginning. Okay, here's my gray again. And just to make it stand out, I'll choose whether I'm going to go lighter or darker than the background, just for the sake of making it stand out. So here's an edge. All it takes is an edge. I don't have to do a whole bunch of detail work. Once I've got the main light and shadow body worked out, edges are a lot of times just a line, you know, in order to get the feel that I'm after. I don't really need to do a whole bunch of details. Now I'll take my light spots and blend them up into that edge a little bit. So to be fair, I am including some details. It's just not extreme. I actually think I need to go darker because this is like the dark side of the shape. So I'm going to pull my darker gray. There we go. Now we got maybe just like a little bit of sunlight here. Let's enhance the sunlight on the back side. Sunlight hitting there, hitting here, like this. Maybe hitting this spot where that pant leg is coming down. I'm going to put a, you know what, better than a red and white sneaker? Wouldn't that just look appropriate on this little character here? Red. Like this. I'm going to put a little bit of light on this is going to be my orange-white mixture to put a little bit of sunlight on that side of the sneaker, like this. Well, it kind of mixed with some dark colors there. Let me try again. Use orange. And
So
here's a little bit of white.
Been talking about different aspects of this fella, and Tanya loves the right arm. She thinks the reflected light is beautiful. I like how you use the purple in the shadow on the shirt, but instead of just darkening it with black or something, that's good. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's good. That's a good landscape technique because it suggests the presence of blue, purple, gray light.
Right.
When you do that, when you do edges. So it's a good landscaping trick. Not landscaping. Landscape painting. Okay. Bringing the pants, making the pants hang down a little bit more over the shoe. Okay, now I'm going to put a little shadow on this side of the sneaker. Like that. And then I need a white strip right here for the tread. And I got to slope down a little bit because the perspective, is like up on a toe. Here's black to mix with the white to make it darker on this far side. It's brighter as it's there. There, now we got the tread. Now, I mean, who doesn't like Converse All-Stars, right? It's like the best shoe. So I'm going to put white toe right there. Like that. No, you can't even see it because that rock's in the way. Well, that's disappointing. Honestly, we're going to fix that. I'm going to get some brown. The important things. Some things in the picture are very important. I want people to see that there's a white toe on this sneaker, so I'm going to cut in a little more shadow on the rocks. There we go. See, I want to see that white toe.
That worked.
All right. Now I'm going to put a shadow under the tread, like this. There we go. Now we got that. Now we got that shoe lifted up, like that. Okay, we got to do the other one. Here's my dark side of the tread. Here's a little bit of white on the sunlit half of the tread. And now I need a shadow. And the light is coming from here, so I need a shadow on the ground right here. So we're just going to paint rocks again, but we're going to paint them with a different color scheme. Black. And look, I've already got my skin tone purple, but the way I mixed this was by adding some orange to adding some purple to a color like this. This is just a light brown, black, white, and orange. Added a touch of purple to get that. And so you were saying you kind of liked the purple on the red shirt. I'm going to use purple on the shadow on the ground for the same reason. Ambient blue light on otherwise grayish brown colors. I expect to see a little bit of purplish tone as that light bounces. So I'm going to put the tops of rocks. Maybe I can even line them up with the bright spots. It's a bit on the impressionistic side to try to line up shapes. But I could do a shadow. Just that purple by itself really helps. So this is the boy's shadow on the ground. The arm's kind of raised out here. Let's put a little bit of an arm shadow going up here. Like that. Let's take this. I got a little bit of black here to make this look more like a shadow in the rocks. I'll take the tiniest bit of white to put little highlights on top of my rocks so they don't just look like two-tone paint blobs. Here on my already lighter areas, it's just a stroke to lighten them up. Here. Most of the time when I paint shadows, this is it right here. It's just repainting the surface that the shadow is on with a different color scheme. That's what it means to paint a shadow half the time. There we go. And that'd be fun to see that shadow a little stronger when it's over in the over here on the edge. So I'm going to enhance these colors a little here. Let's throw in some bright sunlit rocks. Here's orange to get my color. I'm going to add white to this in a second to get more of that sunlit rocky color. Get some bright white. And this is all just finishing touches to bring out what I want to bring out. That's all it is. It's not, none of this is what needs to happen. I'm just doing it because it's what I want to really show when someone looks. I want to see the edge of this shadow because it's fun. So I'm taking some bright orangey color to contrast with the edge of that shadow that I just made. Like this. Just so that I can see
it's
that.
looking really good.
Thanks. There we go. Now I got the shadow going across. Just a little extra effort to make it stand out. Strategic contrast. That's what that should be called.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a bit tricky to figure out how dark to make that shadow because I always forget that as it dries, it gets darker.
Yes, that is that's something that just
Yeah.
you do it a bunch of times and it gets more predictable. Familiarity.
Tempting at
You
first to
know,
make it too dark.
yeah. I think it's a lot like dough recipes. You somebody that makes a lot of dough recipes doesn't use a cookbook after a while.
True.
You just get used to the ratios. Okay. All I'm doing is stuff I've already done now, just putting in those colors. Once again, I'm going to put some brighter sunlit areas where I already have the brighter color. I decide how mixed is mixed enough, and then I start just highlighting the light spots and bringing out the shapes that are there. So here's some rocks under the water. I'm matching that more saturated brown color than what's on the dry ground. Let's do some more. Let's put some.
Oh yeah, I had to leave halfway through last live stream suddenly,
Oh, yeah.
and so I
Okay,
went
yeah.
back and I finished watching it after and heard the discussion about spit, and I had to laugh. We have
Really, I missed that one.
the spit of land. Oh, was that only on maybe within the chat part? People were talking about it was a spit of
Yeah.
land. And we actually have a couple places around our area that are called like Rebecca Spit, and
Really?
we're
That's a
going to
word.
go
I
out
don't
to the
even know that
spit.
word.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that's cool.
it's yeah,
That's a new one for me. Now I know. I'm going to use that next time I'm out camping with my family. Let's go out to that little spit of land off the edge of the shoreline.
Yeah, it's usually like where the like a river or a bay comes in, and then there's a piece of land that comes out. There's a really big one on the back of Quadra Island, just off of our island. It's called Rebecca Spit, and people go and camp all along it. It's beautiful to be right
Nice.
out on the water, just
Okay,
kind of
that's
like
cool.
where your little fella is.
Yeah,
Spit.
yeah, nice. That's perfect. Okay. Okay, I think we've about wrapped it up here. This is it. Last painting of the year, about done.
Well, I think it looks wonderful.
Done. Thank you. Okay, so we
Oh,
got our.
so Eva has one question here. So if you want to look the rocks to look wet, you would put a bright reflective purple sky rock color mixture.
Okay, wait. Now she's talking about if you want to make the rocks on land look like they are wet. No, we're not talking about underwater rocks right now. We're talking about on land rocks. The trick is to raise the contrast and sharpen the edges and saturate the colors. All to some degree, not to any particular extreme. Those three things cause something to be more covered in water. Right. So the three things are increase saturation, increase contrast, and sharpen edges between light and shadow, because that looks more like reflection. Think about sharpening edges as making reflections like this. See, the reflection of the tree has a sharp edge. It's not a gradient. So when you sharpen edges, it has the look of reflective surface. That in combination with higher contrast has the look of a reflected scene, because the high contrast is in the environment of the shadows and the lights. And then the color saturation is an effect that I'm not sure why it's there. I don't know why things are more saturated when they're underwater, but it's an effect we can borrow to do a good job of that. So I'll show you. I'll show you. We'll make some more wet-ish rocks by the shore. That'll be the last thing we do. Just by using that effect.
Cheryl wants to be sure, will we still be able to see the past videos for a while?
Oh yeah, they're permanently posted.
Yeah,
go back and watch them. I'm not deleting anything. So
perfect.
If they ever did get pulled, I'd have them in archives that were available. So as a subscriber, you always have access to those.
Excellent.
Okay, there we go. There's our wet water. Our wet water. There's our underwater rocks. Now, I'm going to raise the contrast to make some wet rocks here in the foreground. So let's do real high contrast. I'm going to be careful about not blending too much because I want to keep edges, unblended edges. When you have real soft gradients, it doesn't feel like reflection as much. It doesn't feel like mirror reflection where you see objects in the reflection. So we can get that effect by doing a little less blending. So here we'll make the closest. Oh yeah, I wanted to make reflection of I wanted to make reflection of him on the. So here, let's make a distracted. Hang on, I'm distracted. We're gonna make a slightly grayer reflection on here. That's gonna be the legs of this boy. Right here, slightly darker, slightly grayer. Right here, I'm using the middle skin tone to do this, just because it's similar enough already. Here's a leg. Here we go. I got to make a lot of the brown in there because if I don't put a lot of the brown, it's not going to look like a believable foreground reflection. I have to make sure I put a lot of that in there. Okay. There we go. A little bit of reflection in here. Let's add a touch of yellow. Let's go like this. Yellow and orange. We got to make sure we get the saturated colors in there. The foreground reflection needs saturated colors. I just needed to add a little bit of that. It's hard, I'm torn between the grayer color because it's a gray reflection and more saturated colors because it's dark. So where I have the black, I want darker saturated colors, but where I have this, maybe grayer. So this this is a challenge. I'm going to put the lighter grayer. It just means it's, if I wanted to really be accurate, I'd really need to mix it up. Okay, gray on my lighter, I'm going to address the lighter areas. Those would be more of like an interference to the underwater color. So I'm going to take a lighter grayer color and just little touches in here, just little touches to represent little bits of there we go. Little bit of sunlight on the pants reflecting off the water.
This is really timely for Susan. She's just working on a shallow water piece right now, so
Okay.
works out perfect for her.
Nice. Yeah, foreground, shadow, reflections, take on the underwater color. That's what I was trying to implement there. Okay, back to my wet rocks. Wet rocks. We got a bunch of river rocks in the foreground. Kind of bumping out here. We got a shoreline. And then we're going to put colors in here. Let's just load it up with orange. Lots of orange. We don't care about how much paint. Just put lots of paint on there.
Might need to bump the camera just a little bit to the left.
Thank you for telling me.
Oh, yeah, there was quite a bit missing.
Okay. Yeah. So I just put a big load of orange on there. That's
okay.
What I did. Okay. And that's not the end result color that I want. I just want to have color to put brighter colors on top of. So we've got orange. Now I'm putting black where I already have black. Let's grab some of this, put it here. I already have black there. So this is different than randomly coming through and putting orange on dark areas and black on orange areas. I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to separate shapes. Orange, see, here's an orange spot, put more orange on it. Here's an orange spot, more orange on it. Maybe make a new orange spot here and there. But this is going to develop contrast between my lighter and darker colors. There. Now I've got the start. Let's start lightening up those highlights now. And so these colors, let's add some diversity. Let's make a few of them a little more purplish rocks, and let's make a few of them a little more greenish rocks with some black and yellow here. Here's a greener highlight here. But they're all lighter colors. And so these lighter colors are going to go where I already have my lighter orange like this, so that I can maintain contrast. I'm not quick to put these over the black. Maybe some as I develop the picture. Let's see, I'm after that high contrast in the presence of saturated colors. And then the less blended edges as well. Okay, go there. And then let's put a little bit brighter colors still. This is bright sunlight, but we're gonna not blend those all crazy. We're gonna put patches of lighter color in there. And then on the back side here, let's not have a black outline to it. Let's cut that dark edge so it's kind of more reflective as it goes back. Let's even add a little bit of kind of bluer, really capture these tones that are up in here. It's always a safe bet to just add a little blue gray to ambient, anything you want to look like the edge of the skin, that reflection on the water, that there's just this constant supply of kind of bluish gray light in the shadows when you're outside. Ordinarily, it's just always a safe bet to put that in your painting and have it look like reflection. So just on the edges of my pile of rocks, or I'll say just on the top edge of any one rock, I can do a color like this. So here's a rock, put it on the top edge. Let's take this. I'm going to mix some on the palette. It's kind of like painting the faces of waves. See, here's kind of a blue gray, not so light. Right across the top of any rock. It's just a stroke. I'm not trying to go crazy with details. See how that little stroke immediately kind of makes a silvery, watery look on those things. And then the final touch, after you get the more saturated, higher contrast, less blended edges, are some little dots of sun reflection. So we just get our brightest color, and we just put little dots on any point that we think the sun is hitting real strong, making some reflection. There, the high contrast to get the wet look. Now I'm just strategically randomizing the shapes. It looks kind of predictable. They're all in like these nice rows, like a tortoise shell. It happens. Let's put some black in there. I'm just trying to break apart shapes like that. And then let's make some drier rocks at the top. We can dry the rocks out by coming up here, lightening the overall color, desaturate it. These rocks are going to be more dryish up on the top. They're not going to have all that blue on the edge. They're going to kind of merge with these rocks. And then I'm going to lower the contrast by bringing the colors together. I'm going to soften the edges by bringing the colors together as well. And that is going to make these less wet. There, see the rocks get more dry.
Yeah, very interesting. Good.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's it. That's the picture. Let's zoom out. Oh yeah, I like the way it looks in the reflection of the boy. I think that was a fun little thing to have in there at the end. Okay, let's zoom out. You know what I forgot in here? I forgot to repair my splash. I got this splash going up. I painted right over it with the reflection.
And it looks so good, so you have to fix that.
We don't want to lose the splash here. Let's exaggerate it. Put little teeny tiny specks going up. It's really flying on here. Okay, and then here it becomes a little more solid. Like that. Just shooting up like a spout. There we go.
This just turned out so good.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think, honestly, I think my painting has improved just because of doing these live streams.
Huh.
Being careful to think through. We as artists, we do a lot without thinking, but but going back and showing how things works has made it fresh in my mind and forced me to further develop techniques. It's practice. It's just good old-fashioned practice. For me, it's paid off. So it's been
Yes.
fun. I've got several rough paintings that I think I might actually do something with later to eventually put in a show or something, not destroy them, in other words. I do something with them.
Well, it's another level of learning, isn't it? To actually do something and to teach. So you go from hearing it to doing it to teaching it. And I think with each of those things you do, it's another level of actually learning it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good insight. Okay. Had to touch up that corner. It was an unpainted section of canvas there. That's it. Lots of things, of course, could be added and improved, but isn't that fun? Isn't that fun to just fill that
So-
painting?
So Americana.
You're right. It is. The ball cap.
Yeah.
The ball cap and unsupervised play.